Hey guys, this is Tony with Startup FBA, and I wanted to give you guys a really zoomed out level overview of what web scraping entails. I put together a little presentation for you guys to see what it looks like. So let's get into it. So what we're looking at here is a presentation I put together on Gamma. And so what web scraping essentially is going to do for us is it's going to solve the sourcing bottleneck in the Amazon workflow. And so what we're looking at is we're going to end up using a programming language called Python. And what that's going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to automate our sourcing. And the way it's going to do that is we're going to be able to collect a lot of data points from websites automatically in the background without us having to manually do this. And so that's going to allow us to source at scale, and that's going to free up a ton of time, and our per unit of input is going to produce a lopsided output. And so before we get into this breakdown, I wanted to show you guys what it actually looked like in real time, just so we had some context, both in what it looks like, and I'm going to show that over here. I'm going to show you one of the scripts that I have put together. So I'm going to run this so you can see how fast it is, one, and what it's doing, and how it looks in real time. This is extracting UPCs in real time from a website, and it just finished. And so the data it just outputted is right over here. And I'm going to show you the raw output. And so when we look at this, we just gathered 27,000 UPCs that are in stock. And then I calculated there's a coupon available on this website, and I calculated the cost after that coupon's applied for all 25,000. And so what ends up happening is, and part of the process I'm not going to show just for sake of brevity, is that I'm going to put this through software called ScanUnlimited and Keepa and then merge the two data sets together. And so what that final output that it's going to create is going to be this. This is a full-blown output without applying any profit filters. This is just to show you the scale of the ASINs that the website carries. So in this case, there's 4,000 ASINs that matched as a result under, I think, 150,000 sales rank. And so let's go ahead and apply a filter here and put the profit above, well, let's do the ROI above 10%. And so what's really good about scraping is that now my starting point is everything's already matched. And so I have an example here that I wanted to show you guys so you can get some context. I can click on this link and I can click on the Amazon link. So it'll take me straight to the website, size 6.5, straight to the ASIN, size 6.5, 118, and then it's $71.99 after its coupon, $20 profit, 28% ROI. And so what ends up happening is I have all of these choices now, and my starting point is vetting the data. And so you're going to have to go through all of this data. In this case, there's still over 381 ASINs that are above 10% ROI. And so I wouldn't necessarily encourage sourcing 10% ROI, like on shoes specifically. But the reason I'm doing that is just to showcase how much the output is, because there are certain conditions where you might consider buying something if the cash back on it is, say, like 15% for that day. And so going back into the presentation, the reason that this matters is because it's going to solve a bunch of critical problems that we don't normally that a lot of beginning sellers are going to have. Mainly, it's going to be really manual intensive. The time efficiency is going to suck, and it's kind of no quality of life to live, if I'm being honest. And so at the end of that, once you solve that pain point, you're going to source at scale. And what that's going to do is it's going to unlock that bottleneck, and you're going to be able to go ahead and you're going to be able to have profit unlocked in your business, and you can apply that profit to any other aspect in your business to help you leverage and scale it. Meaning you could hire a VA and you can use that VA to buy back your time even further. And then you can work on the business instead of in the business. You can hire like accountants to do your books and stuff. So like everything stems from your ability to source. And so that's why sourcing is such a critical skill to master. And so what ends up happening in our case is that we want to match UPCs. These are the data points that we're grabbing, right? So UPCs is another word for barcodes. And we're making all of the matches to the ASIN in the product catalog because it has a barcode associated with it. And so part of the scraping process is we can do stock checks. We're calculating the profit and the ROI. In certain cases, if needed, we're calculating the promotions and the discounts since they're there. We want to grab them and factor those into our cost of goods sold. And so as you can imagine, like before having this system, it's just really intensive and tedious. But once you have it set up, as you saw, this script for the website, it processed over 20,000 UPCs in under a minute, actually. And so it puts you into this position where like your time is so much better focused. And this is going to be done all away. And so kind of one of the cool things about that is that like at the maxed out version, you can work fully remote. meaning like you're not tied down to a physical location anymore. And I think that's absolutely brilliant to have like as an end game if you want to travel. And so just for context, what can be scraped? Any data point that's being shown on a website, that's something we can grab because we know that it's there, we can see it, and so we'll just put it into the code. And so some of those things that we're looking at that we would grab would be UPC, the prices, the model numbers, inventory status because we want to stock check it because we can capture the values for the out of stock stuff and set up methodologies to trigger or monitor stockouts. Some websites offer inventory levels, so we can capture that data point and puts us in a really good position because then we can stock out listings in that case and prevent any competition from coming in from behind us. The other thing we can grab is the promos, the sales, and the coupon codes and all that stuff because that's just going to lower our COGS, our cost of goods down. And so just kind of a really zoomed out view, what the process looks like is we're going to have to figure out what website to target. And the coding language we're using is Python. And so we're going to use Python to basically open up every web page on the website and extract all those data points that we want and save it to a CSV file or an Excel file for our export. Because we have to get the raw data and then we have to process it and interact with it. And then we get that final output, which is the leads list that you guys saw. And so just to give you guys a real world use case scenario, on May 15th, 2025, Rakuten had a 15% cash back day. And so on that day, I ran over 400,000 UPCs all in stock and I produced over 20,000 ASINs. And so some of those websites I was doing was Kohl's, Nike, Dick's, Sporting Goods. And so what ends up happening is whoever has the most data is going to have more choices. And when you have more choices, you can take the best setups and you can basically statistically stack the deck so much in your favor that you're almost guaranteed to win. And so what ends up happening is once you have this implemented, obviously you're going to automate your sourcing process. But going back to earlier was you can pick the setup that you're going to chase. Because one of the data points that we have is I can see the return rates, meaning low or high, and I can avoid the high ones and I can target the low return rate stuff. And that's going to be awesome because now I'm not going to have to worry about returns as much. The other thing you can do is that this is going to be your personal preference and what you're optimizing for is that if you want to do this as a solo operator, now you don't have to worry about hiring a VA because you basically produced all the leads without having to hire a VA or having to worry about training them and all that. On the other side of it is if you have a VA, you can train them to do this and or you can just give them the output and have them vet the leads to whatever your buying criteria looks like. And then obviously you're going to be in a position to basically outmaneuver all of your competition. Because I like to think of it as first to market. You're going to get the best pickings if you run this like within the first hour of any sale. And so just kind of some things that I want to address up front is in terms of cost, I thought scraping was going to be expensive, but everything that I run in my setup is about $180 a month. And so sometimes VAs will cost like $300, $400, $500 a month. And the cost to run this is a fraction of that. And the output from the software that I can produce is in magnitudes more of what any one individual VA can produce. The other issue is this is all written in Python, and I don't have any type of programming background. And so what ended up happening is ChatGPT writes everything. And so the brilliant part of this is that I like to use the analogy of we want to be the architect, like we want to design the house and we want to let ChatGPT build the scripts in this case. So we want to focus all of our skill set in being able to know how to navigate like where the data points are, how the website interacts with itself and doing all that good stuff. I like to use the analogy that it's just a big puzzle and you're trying to figure out how the puzzle pieces interact with each other and then you reassemble them into a meaningful output. The one part I would suggest, like if you were to ask me, like when should you introduce web scraping into your workflow? Personally, I would think around $10,000 to $20,000 a month in revenue, because at that point you already the concern I have is you want to have all of like the foundation down, because I'm concerned about like anyone multiplying their failure, so to speak. At that revenue level, you're going to have an understanding of how the business operations work, inventory turnover works, basically how to have an eye to take setups that are like meant to succeed and avoid like the common pitfall traps of things that are going to break, meaning like they're going to tank or have bad price stability or have bad velocity. And so just as an overview zoomed out of that software cost that I was mentioning earlier, I use Python, which is a scripting language that's free. I run it on a software that's also free called PyCharm, and all of that's written by ChatGPT. I use something called a proxy service, and that's through ZenRows. And the reason we use that is basically to rotate the IP address, and that does that for us automatically. And the reason that's important is because we're trying to bypass site security because websites generally don't like being web scraped. For analysis, I'm using ScanUnlimited and Keepa because they both do different functions, but they both also have data points we need, and we merge them together into that Excel output. And the reason I like working in Excel is that I can share it, I can run my filters, do notes and stuff on that. And so that's kind of like a really zoomed out view of what web scraping entails. I have a longer write up, but I'm going to bring this on the screen just so that if you want to like screenshot, I'm not going to read every bullet point. But like one of the things I like highlighting is that what are the problems that web scraping solves? The biggest thing in Amazon is your ability to source, and that's going to be the bottleneck. And so if you can solve that bottleneck, you're going to produce profit, and you can use that profit to overcome any other deficiency you have in your business, like in terms of having like capital available to hire a VA or a bookkeeper and stuff like that. The other thing I like is it opens you up to being able to farm cash back, and I love that aspect for travel. OA, I think like is web scraping with OA is the end game. I don't think enough people know how to do this, let alone that it even exists. And so you end up being in like kind of a market of one in the sense that your competition isn't that wide. And not only that, is that even if they do know how to do this, the buying preferences for everyone is just going to vary. And by that, I mean two people can look at the same listing and walk away with two completely different like end results. Something I would buy, someone else would skip. The other thing is someone could buy it for FBM and it would work really well, like day one on a sale. But since I do everything FBA, that setup's not going to be appealing to me, so I'm going to skip it. And so those are just some of the things to consider. And I wanted to give you guys like a really zoomed out view of what web scraping looks like and like the end result of that. And so I'm going to have another video talking about more or less like what my setup actually entails because I intend on teaching classes on how to do it from start to finish. But this is just going to serve as a good primer to show you guys what this looks like. So if you guys have any questions, hopefully this video you found it helpful. I appreciate you guys. Feel free to reach out. Yeah, yeah.